So what's going on, you guys? It's your boy Ben Mahari here, representing Mahari Nation Sports Podcast here. Much love to the entire LDBC and the basketball community. Now, I wanted to talk about something that's really been heating up for the last couple of days, and it's revolving about what Isiah Thomas said this week. Okay, um, he was on Chris Broussard's show on Fox Sports on Thursday, and they were discussing about the greatest of all time status. And Isiah Thomas made his case that today's superstars are vastly superior athletes to the ones that Michael Jordan and Isiah Thomas played against during the 80s and the 90s. Okay. And this is what he said in his quote. He said, I think this generation of players is not getting enough credit for what they're doing because the athletes that are in this generation are far superior than than what was in my generation. When we were playing, Jordan was the best athlete that we have ever seen. But far from an athletic standpoint, there are like 10 or 11 guys in the NBA right now with Jordan's athleticism. We didn't have that back then. With what Kevin Durant and LeBron James are doing, if you put them in the era of the 80s with their talent, their athleticism, who's the GOAT? Now, this has really sparked a lot of controversy and a lot of different sides of the fence. Um, we all know that Michael Jordan and Isiah Thomas did not have the greatest relationship. Okay, and these quotes are vastly cemented. You understand what I'm saying? Because remember, when Michael Jordan was drafted by the Bulls in 1984, okay, he immediately from day one took Chicago by the throat and basically became the king of the city. Something Isiah Thomas resented. Because remember, Isiah Thomas is originally from the south side of Chicago. Actually, yeah, no, from the west side, I should say, west side of Chicago. And he grew up in Chicago during the rough times, during the whole drug period. Okay, he even witnessed his own siblings getting shot to death or going through their own issues with drugs. He played in St. Joseph's High School in Chicago, won a state championship. He played with Bob Knight in Indiana and won a national championship there. And to be honest with you, he's one of original Chicago's greatest athletes. But because of what Jordan was able to do in Chicago, okay, unfortunately, Chicago didn't give him the respect that he felt that he should have deserved. And from that point forward, that kind of set off the rivalry. And then there was the rumor and the speculation that Isiah Thomas led a freeze out of Jordan during the 85 All-Star game in Indianapolis. I never really believed that, but there are some people that believe that Isiah Thomas intentionally wanted to freeze out Michael Jordan because they felt that Jordan was getting too much publicity and too much spotlight than rather out of the other players. So there's that. And plus, both the Bulls and the Pistons played in the same Central Division, and they always meet each other 4 times a year, and their games were always rough and physical. All right, you know that Bill Laimbeer and Rick Mahorn took their turns, getting after Jordan anytime he drove to the basket. You know what I mean? And during their playoff battles between 1988 through 1990, the Pistons pretty much owned the Bulls. You know what I mean? From a physical standpoint, from a matchup standpoint, and from a psychological standpoint. It wasn't until Scottie Pippen matured into the player that he became, and with the tutelage of Phil Jackson and Tex Winter's triangle offense, that they finally got over the hump and swept through the Pistons in the 91 Eastern Conference Finals. But unfortunately, what cemented the bad boy Piston legacy is when they decided to walk off the court um, during the final seconds of the game 4 when they were about to be swept. And unfortunately, there were a lot of people that took that and basically resented Isiah and the Pistons for not showing true class. But they forget that Michael Jordan said a quote in the newspaper that I think that he thinks that the rest of the NBA would rejoice when the Pistons are no longer the NBA champions. And I can understand why the Pistons would feel this way. Because if Jordan would have not said anything about it and just would have swept them, maybe there would have been something different. We don't know. But because of that quote that Michael Jordan said, the Pistons really took it to heart, and that's why they walked off the court the way they did. And unfortunately, they've been kind of been blackballed by most of the NBA. with exception of Dumars, Rodman, those kinds of people. I'm talking about Isiah and Lambeer. Because remember, Isiah Thomas was supposed to be on the 92 Dream Team, but because of the rivalry and because of the personal animosity that he had for Jordan and for Pippen, and plus there was also the deceived rumors about Isiah questioning Magic Johnson's sexuality in the wake of the HIV issue that Magic was going through. It was basically too much baggage for them to deal with, and they left Isiah off the team in favor of John Stockton. And to that is really unfair, but you can understand that their kind of perspective on that. Okay. Now, we all know that uh, both Jordan and Isiah never have kind of have some sort of respect for each other, but they don't see eye to eye, and they don't really see each other as friends, and they should never ever be friends. That's just how it is. But the notion that Isiah would say that that the athletes of today could match Jordan's athleticism, um, I don't understand where Isiah is coming from this. And this is coming, and I think, from my opinion, this is coming from a bit of more hate and animosity. And he sold out his entire generation to try to make the argument that LeBron James and Kevin Durant could perform well in their generation, which you could argue that they could, but the problem was the 80s and the 90s, the way they were playing back then, was so rough and physical that they would have to adjust their games to try to make sure they have a longevity in the sport. Okay, and did Isiah Thomas forget guys like Dominique Wilkins? Did he forget Daryl Dawkins, who was a superior athlete, Mark Aguirre, okay, Spud Webb, all right. Did he forget those kinds of athletes? Clyde Drexler, who could jump out of the gym, okay, Jerome Kersey, Kevin Johnson. The list goes on and on of these superior athletes that could probably perform well in today's basketball, considering the rule changes the defense, okay. Now, with Jordan maybe being defended by, say, a Kawhi Leonard or a prime LeBron James in an era where basically defenses are far more sophisticated and thus difficult to crack because of reflex of illegal defenses, which in turn it would basically effectively, surround great players with multiple defenders, which basically was a lot more different than basically straight up one-on-one defense. All right. But in the 80s and the 90s, you had to be attached to your players on all times. And either you're guarding a man or basically you had to double team, which is basically the concept of illegal defense. Okay. Now, I don't understand why Isiah would make this kind of argument. And I think that, to me, this is kind of shows more of a little more saltiness and resentment against the Bulls and against Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen for what he kind of felt that, listen, you basically tainted our name. But the Pistons did it to themselves because they played played a brand of basketball that was not popular among a lot of players, and they always felt that the Pistons wanted to cheap shot people and wanted to end their careers. All right. Remember, Larry Bird hates Bill Laimbeer to this day. All right. And Larry Bird got tackled by Bill Laimbeer back in the '87 Eastern Conference Finals in Game 3 and threw the ball at Bill Laimbeer. So you knew how hateful or how hated the Detroit Pistons were at that time. Okay. And another thing, too, about Bill Laimbeer has also come across as a very bitter old man, basically saying that LeBron James is the greatest player of all time. It just comes across as basically hatred and animosity because he knows in his heart of hearts Michael Jordan was the greatest player of his time. But it's basically coming from anger and animosity through so many years of playoff wars. All right. Now, I'm gonna put it kind of like this. The flip side of the argument during Jordan's era is that defenders could hand check you. That's a big deal because you were able to get away with more one-on-one defense back in the game back then, and you were able to put your hands on the ball handler and make them go to sides of the floor where they want you to go. All right. You couldn't be able to have that freedom to basically break the defender down one-on-one and basically get into a rhythm to your jump shot. Imagine if James Harden tried to go one-on-one against some of the best defenders of the '80s and the '90s. He would be frustrated because he wouldn't be able to break his defender down, and he wouldn't get away with the zero-step dribble because the zero-step dribble was a dribble that never existed in basketball. And most times the referees would call it traveling because you're basically trying to, not dribble, but basically trying to pretend you're dribbling which you're not. And that would, in sense, would be a travel. That's just the facts of the matter. All right. And if you put Harding with the Chicago Bulls at that time, the the Bulls would not win any championships because the Knicks would have easily figured them out. The Pistons would have easily figured them out, and they would have not won on any championships. That's the facts. All right. And the fact is, it's a very fascinating, type of view that people would want to take. But you have to take into consideration that in today's NBA, you can't touch the guards, you can't touch opposing guards. All right, they're more relaxed on zone defenses than rather than basic man-to-man defenses. Okay, with more stress on three-point shooting than rather than the overall kind of game. Okay, so believe what you want to believe about what Isiah said, but I'm taking the position that Isiah said this to basically trying to slight Michael Jordan once again. But in the process, he basically crapped on his generation that basically were vastly superior athletes. I mean, for all the young kids out there, go look at Dominique Wilkinson's highlight reels. Okay, not just his dunks, but his ability to shoot the ball from anywhere around the court, and he was an 80 to 85% free throw shooter for his career, while averaging at least 25 points per season. All right, and in the year that he came back from the Achilles tendon injury, I want to post the numbers here real quick. The same year, actually not this, the next year after he came back from the Achilles tendon injury, after 92, in 93 he played 71 games and averaged 29, almost 30 points per game. So it's ridiculous how Isiah Thomas could sit there and say that LeBron James and Kevin Durant could do well in the 80s, and there are about 10, 11 guys that match Jordan's athleticism. Bro, not all athletes can match what Jordan brought to the table. Now, sure, they could probably jump higher, or maybe some could probably, have a bit more muscular than them, but no one can match the type of speed, agility, and athleticism that Michael Jordan had. Now, if Michael was playing in today's era with the advancement of sports science and technology and conditioning and recovery, man, he would play probably for about 20 to at least 22 seasons and still would average about 25 points per game. And with all the different rule changes too. So I really took it as Isiah once again is basically sliding on Michael Jordan once again. And don't forget, tonight with the Jordan documentary of episodes 3 and 4, we're gonna see more about the animosity between the Bulls and the Pistons. All right. For all the new kids out there, okay, you're gonna see why the Bulls and the Pistons hated each other and why the games were so physical and why Isiah and Bill Laimbeer still hold this grudge, this animosity against Jordan and the Bulls, and probably for the rest of the league for that matter. So you're gonna be tuned in for a major treat tonight. But again, Isiah is wrong and he knows it. And the one thing you got to be careful with Isiah is that Isiah is a very slick street talker. What I mean is he has a very intelligent mind, but sometimes he'll slip in some little jabs in between the lines. He's a very good slick talker. All right. So you have to be very careful about a lot of the things that you hear from him. Okay. And don't forget, think about how he got fired from as a coach with the Pacers, with the Knicks, and when he was trying to succeed in college. Think about how he trashed himself as an executive for the New York Knicks all these years. So Isiah Thomas is one of the all-time greatest point guards in the game, a fierce competitor, you know what I mean, and a guy that deserves more respect than he's been given. But a lot of the stuff he's put on himself, okay? Especially, and don't forget, especially the sexual harassment lawsuit back in 2007 when he was executive for the Knicks too. So he's really done himself a bad disservice to his reputation. You know what I mean? And also the walk off of the court in 1981 did not do him any favors. And unfortunately, it made him into a bad character that people wanted to despise. So that's just my 2 cents on the whole, situation at hand here. But don't miss the episodes 3 and 4 of The Last Stand Show too. It should be a great treat, and y'all will enjoy it. So this is all I got to say about the situation there. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Y'all have yourselves a good day and stay safe out there.